so much of this manosphere drive really doesn't necessarily target, it just seeps into young boys whom disadvantaged backgrounds, which is a big gap of boys
Massive.
right now, more and
Yeah.
more. Like you said, no fathers, growing up in some level of poverty or lack that they're
Yeah.
experiencing. And it speaks to them so deeply because, like you said, it's the watch, the cars, the lifestyle, the women that they don't have, and they can see their futures because they see it through their parents, and they can see a future where they never have what they
Yeah.
want, and they're searching for someone who can go, this is how you do
Yeah.
it, this is how you get there.
Yeah. And it's really encouraging when you have those conversations with boys, because loads of them don't believe this stuff. Loads of them can see it,
Loads of them. Yeah.
but it does.
Loads of them even hate the misogyny. Like,
Yeah.
that's something that I like. You'll say, I've talked to some boys and they were like, I like, this was a couple of years ago when you could still find Andrew Tate videos on YouTube, and they were like, I like that he wants to motivate us, I like that he wants to push us, I like that he talks about discipline and routine, and I'm like, those are all really good things. And they were like, what I don't like about him is how he talks about women, how he talks about like people of certain races and blah blah blah. And you're like, good. I'm really happy to hear that you're not just wholesale taking things. There's so many boys who do really reject a lot of the message,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, there's also a lot of boys that just take it wholesale as like, this person is Jesus kind
Yeah.
of way.
Yeah, you're right, and that's like trying to pick sweet corn out of a turd, isn't it? It's just that kind of idea that sorry. But he says some good things. Oh, that's massively outweighed by the way he gets your attention, which is by saying vile things about whole swathes of people. It really, I think one of the tipping points for loads of people with him was when he was trying to wind up the Southport race riots. And he then said, wow, people are being racist to me as a mixed race man. So suddenly it upsets you. And I think that's also one of the other central hypocrisies in the manosphere, which kind of links to this, is HS. And what he was saying about, oh, my mum hates me talking about this kind of stuff. My mum hates me talking about, I was brought up, his mum worked her backside off to send him to independent school. Probably be on a scholarship, but still, the equipment you need as a boy going to independent school is ridiculously expensive. So we have a man that actively talks about women as if they're dirt, makes money off the back of them through OnlyFans, judges them for that, has an agency that profits off them, and is showing at one point him getting sucked off in a toilet, which he's then going to put on his own Telegram channel to make more money off himself doing sex work effectively. But what he does, which I think they all do, is they say, well, this is content. This is me, but this is content. And him saying, I don't give a fuck, he says it all the time, which means he really, really does care. But that is
Yes.
trying to tell himself he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the hypocrisy, but their entire lives are based on a deck of cards. They're a whole kind of house of cards. And if they allowed themselves to believe that actually what they're doing is as bad as it is, then they couldn't look themselves in the mirror, which is where they spend
They'd feel the
97%
shame that
of
they
their
want to
time
avoid.
looking in a mirror. But they don't see what they don't want
Mm.
to see. So all of it, yeah, the whole of it is hypocrisy. And I think that's a really clever thing that they do, their own mental trick, the same way that Andrew Tate does it. This is content. It doesn't really matter what I say. But yet what they don't finish off in that, they only just scratch the surface of it towards the end, is the real world impact of all of these guys and all of this repeated stuff about feminism going too far, women are the devil, men are, backed up by things like Lost Boys reports from shadily funded think tanks on Tufton Street that say, oh, boys are oppressed now. That's what you get, and you get division every single place. And I think since 2016, since Brexit, since Donald Trump in America, we have had nothing but division. And this is yet another layer which lends itself really nicely towards a divided populace. And I think that's, for me, that's the most depressing thing about it is because loads of the people creating this content, A, don't believe it, and B, don't care about the impacts of it. And the impacts of it, you see it in one of the clips in Sneeko in that video, where kids go up and go, "Oh, women are stupid," or whatever they say, and they go, "Whoa!" And he says, "Oh, what have I done, mate? You know what you've done, and you had the choice to change that, but you've made it worse. You've doubled down. You've been banned from every platform, but you're allowed back on YouTube now. So you are just creating the same kind of content again and again and again that does the same thing." Look at Nick Fuentes. Look at Charlie Kirk. They're all out of the same mold. And what they're doing is they're backing up capitalism again, which is about you're on your own, mate. The world doesn't care about you. Quite a lot of times recently, I've said I've seen kind of videos and like B-roll videos, and then over the top it says, "You think it's tough now? As a man, it gets worse." And that kind of whole narrative that you're on your own, you have to solve your own problems, the world hates you, all of those things are really, really clear demarcations that come from manosphere narratives and kind of online misogyny narratives. And largely, it's not even anything vague. Women hate you. Women have caused this. We live in a gynocracy, which is utter garbage, but they are so wedded to this idea that that's become part of who they are. And so, oh, sorry, I'm rambling on a bit now. You might want to cut some of that stuff out.
No, but it's so, and there's also these pervasive, these little narratives they put in. Like there's a point in there's two things I want to mention actually. There's this idea that men were born with zero value. You know, those young boys, they said it. They were like, we're born with no value. Women are born with value because they have beauty. We're born with no value, which really touches on one of the deepest beliefs I see in men time and time again, is that it's just like your t-shirt, right? Which is, we are not enough. I am not
Yeah.
enough. There's something wrong with me. I'm worthless. That's the most consistent, I'd say, dysfunctional belief that men have, right? And I'd say it goes like almost like a global consciousness with
And
men.
I have to
So they
prove
tap into
myself.
that.
I have to prove
Yes,
I'm
which is
worthy.
basically precarious masculinity,
Yeah.
right? That my masculinity, my worth as a man is always on the edge of a cliff. I'm always having to prove it in every moment, whether it's the next fight I do, the next trade I do, the next woman I pick up. I'm constantly fighting against this sense and feeling of being worthless. And I'm having to prove it in every single moment of my life.
Yeah, which is absolutely weaponized by this 80% of women only want the top 20% of man, this high value man nonsense. Ask a woman what they think a high value man is, and it's someone who's kind, empathetic, and picks the kids up from school and texts you back, doesn't send you a photo of their dick as text number 3. There's quite a lot of things that if we were to listen to what women are telling us about what they value in men, then that would help. A friend of mine that does this work, Matt Pinkett, said one of the ways he challenges this kind of top 20% myth, this 6-figure, 6-pack, 6 inches and all that kind of stuff. He basically puts up a photo of an absolutely gorgeous model in like Calvin Klein underwear, and they said, "Any of your dads look like this guy?" Because that crumbles the artifice immediately, because they'll be thinking, my dad's fat, my dad's bald, my dad's this, my dad's that. Yeah, my dad leaves skid marks in the toilet, this kind of stuff. The reality of it. Look around restaurants, walk through a shopping centre, look at who's holding hands together. They do not look like Calvin Klein underwear models. They do not look like they've just walked off an All Saints catwalk. They just look like men. But the reason they have currency with women is that they're palatable, they're nice, they're kind, they think about what women want in their lives, and they're acknowledging the fact that we as men are works in progress.
There's a scene in there, again, me and my partner, we pause this, where Myron's doing his podcast and he brings in the influencer girls
Oh yeah.
to be there and for him to ridicule. And what's really interesting about this is it sets up the narrative and then reinforces his beliefs, right? Because what he does is go, "Hey, what are you looking for in a man?" And she's like, 6 figures, 6 foot, and blah
Yeah,
blah
yeah.
blah. I can't remember. And then he gets his calculator up, which is funny because there's some in the calculator. There's some truth in what he said, but what is sneakily happening here is he is a belittling her to make himself look big, but he's also proving this is what all women want, right? And this is what you're not. And
Yeah,
but he's bringing women who he is inviting them in, right? They go on his show so they get exposure, which I'm sure he probably gets paid on the back
I'm
end of
sure.
as well, right? So he's in his interest for him to belittle them, right? It's in his interest for them to prove that his narrative about this is what all men want is true.
Yeah,
But he doesn't bring on. He's not bringing on like a I don't know a doctor in psychology and relational dynamics to have a conversation with him. He's bringing on a 19-year-old influencer, OnlyFans, like whatever it is they do, not believing what they do, but it's like you're bringing in young girls who are immature and they're answering a question that, you're 19 years
it's
old. What did I want in a woman when I was 19? Is very different to what I want when I was in my mid
yeah,
30s, right? As a mature man.
yeah.
And he's teaching men by showing them, like, this is what women want. This is what women want. I'm telling you, this is what women want. And then he gets to make himself look big.
Look, our scientific calculator has proved that she's wrong and all this kind of stuff. It's mad, isn't it? Yeah, imagine him having a conversation with someone who is like a gender expert. Say someone like Liz Plank who wrote For the Love of Men. Imagine them two having a
Yeah.
conversation. He would never do that because he would have his ass handed to him on a plate. And also, he would look ridiculous and it would
Mm. And he
destroy the
does because Louis questions him,
yeah, yeah. It's just
you know?
yeah. And he said, yeah, when he finds out that Louis gone to talk to the woman that does the bookings. Oh, stop that. Get her out of here. Get him out of here. It's so obvious that it's all smoke and mirrors in it. And the moment the smoke starts to clear, they light another fire because they desperately need that to be that artifice. And the fact that he's written a book, Myron Gaines has written a book, hasn't he, called Why Women Deserve Even Less. Did you know
Wow.
that?
No, I
I
didn't know
saw
about that.
there's a brilliant meme of a woman who takes a photo over her shoulder. She's done a selfie. There's a bloke reading it on the train in full sight, and it just says, "Men aren't lonely enough." But just that women deserve even less is the book that he's written, and it just think obviously that again appeals to that dynamic, and it'll be full of skewed statistics if there's any in it at all, full of bigotry, full of kind of manufactured male victimhood, and that I reserve that term for the men that create this victimhood, and I don't, like I said, I don't take anything away from men that are struggling, but the reason most men are struggling is because of the man box and how it restricts our ability to be open, to be honest, to be vulnerable, to understand our emotions from the word go. So they're the things that harm us. It's not
Mhm.
women having better paid jobs than us in one tiny section of one tiny part of industry in one age bracket in the UK.
So, question, as we've gone through, really dissected this, what's the antidote for these young men, and not just young men,
Yeah, yeah.
really? But what is the antidote for them?
Critical thinking for a start. As you said, working with those boys, getting them to think, well, why are they saying this? Why are they sharing this stuff? Obviously, it benefits them, but what's the impact on me? Secondly, I think role modeling. We talk about role models. We talk about male role models. I talk about people like Loyal Kana a lot. I talk about people like Jordan Stevens a lot, recommend their books. I talk about people like Pedro Pascal. I talk about sports people like Andy Murray, who constantly calls out, reporters for saying things like, you're the first, blah, 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 or I'm the first male one. Venus and Serena have been doing it for years, kind of multiple Olympic champions and that kind of stuff. Um, and I'm just trying to highlight the good in men, the good that men can do, and the fact that Mark Ruffalo constantly talking about the suppression of women and misogyny in the public life, and so you don't have to conform to this stuff to A, be successful, and B, be outspoken, and C, do okay with women if that's one of your measures. In fact, being like this, like these guys that are shouting into microphones telling you to be, that's almost a perfect guarantee that you will not be happy, that you will be resentful, and you will then fall further into their arms. So, critical thinking, better role models, read books. Another thing that's been kind of promoted by these guys is the idea that reading's for losers. I did a reel recently on Andrew Tate. He said, "Oh, why do I want to read a book? I want to be making money and in bitches and all this kind of stuff. That's what I want to be doing." And it's the anti-intellectualism, which basically fascism and overwhelming capitalism depends on. It depends on you not thinking about why you're spending that money, why you want to buy this, why you want that car, why you want this stuff. It demands you to be an unthinking slave to it. So you are essentially like I said, you're swapping the matrix that they call it for their own little kind of confining box of what masculinity is. And actually, I think that the fourth thing is look around you. Look around at the reality. If you think it's only 6 foot, six figure, or these men that get women, I suppose that the underlying framework is that if you want to get a 10 out of 10 women, so the whole thing is based on misogynistic judgments of what women have value and what men have value, and that you should only be looking for these. Love doesn't come prepackaged with a bow. Love comes from human connection and belief and respect and understanding. I said earlier on that in May this year, I would have been married 30 years, and we've got 2 daughters, and they are incredible women. And I just think, it's not easy. When I was first in a relationship with Val, I didn't even know how to have arguments. I didn't understand what emotions I was feeling, let alone be able to tap into them, express them, talk about them, and understand what that made me feel and how I could express it. I would just clam up. There were like whole
Mm.
points in where we were having a discussion and I wouldn't speak for 10 minutes because I was trying to work out, what do I feel? Don't know what I feel. Do I feel this? Am I allowed to say this? If I say this, are we finished? We are taught as men to basically blank all our emotions. And no one stands up and said, this is what being a man's about, but we absorb this stuff. We
Mm.
absorb it without question. And all of a sudden, we're locked inside an invisible cage that we don't even have the key to. And unlearning that takes a lifetime. That's the work that we do and that men in our space do. Because women have been talking about this for years and women don't get listened to. Certainly not by men who are already misogynistic. And there are loads of misogynistic men that don't listen to me either. But I get loads of messages from women that say, I showed my husband or my partner or my boyfriend some of your reels, and I think he's starting to get it.
Yes.
And I have feedback from schools. We've had a girl come in and say she's in a relationship with a controlling boyfriend. We've had someone disclose that this has happened to them. These are the tiny wins. These are the tiny things that mean she's going to be safer. He's going to get some support. He's going to get some help for what happened. And they're the glimmers for me. And I think we're not going to fix this overnight because we now have a whole chunk of young men and boys who are potentially, not all boys, but are potentially going to be impacted by this kind of content, by these kind of narratives that are constantly being fed to them. The only way we can unpick that is by being the men we want other boys to men to be like. And that's and opening up conversations, calling people in and saying, mate, I didn't really appreciate that. Do you want to talk about it? Something bothering you? Let's have a chat. And that's the only way it's going to change. It's a long-term plan. And I'm old. The only way it's going to change is by helping young men who are younger than us to kind of go on and do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And for them to see that, I think this is a really, the piece I was talking to my partner about this is like, these guys in the manosphere are able to show very overtly what success looks like, money, cars, women. But what a lot of young boys are never taught or shown is that success is like, inner peace, happiness, joy, friends that you enjoy your time with, people you can be honest with, a family that you can, talk to or not talk to, the things that you can't show in a 20-second Instagram reel, but the things that you feel internally, the things you get to experience in your life, the adventures you get to have. Those are the things that can be very difficult to show someone that make life worth living.
100%. And so much of that content is about material stuff instead of inner peace. This idea that you will be happy when you're rich? You probably won't, because you'll be looking over your shoulder thinking, who's going to take my money off me? You might lose some money and think, well, my value's just gone down. That's the danger behind all of it, is that our value is tied to material stuff, which is a perfect little, you make yourself into a perfect little servant for the Matrix yet again. So, isn't it ridiculous if they're talking about the Matrix that wants you to pay tax and wants you to buy this and that, but they're saying in order to be successful, you need to buy into my Matrix and buy a watch, buy a Lamborghini, and you're basically giving someone a route to different forms of spending to kind of justify them in different ways. When I really wish so much more content focused on character rather than materialism. We'd be in a lot better place in the world, wouldn't we?